Why you should train incorrectly on purpose, part two. I talked about this previously, where I said you should train incorrectly on purpose. People message me telling me that I don't train right, and it's like, well, sure, it's not quote optimal or something, but it's like something I actually enjoy, and that's the point that I want to make to you. As the first point is, you should do things that you actually enjoy, because like if I wrote you a program and you absolutely hate doing it, like even if you can commit to it, like you're not going to put in the same amount of effort, and honestly I think that over time you're just going to burn out. But here's another thought on this, why you should train incorrectly on purpose. If there was one optimal way, one best way for everyone to train, we'd all be doing it. It's like if I've said this in the past about diet, if there was one diet that truly was the best diet, well, we all would have arrived at the same conclusion and we'd all be doing the same thing. We'd all be eating, whatever that diet is. Maybe it's a diet of nothing but, I don't know, broccoli or something, right? No one does that. In fact, like even when it comes to things like keto, some people do keto and they feel great. And some people do keto and they're like, I feel like death. Some people do carnivore and they're like, this is the best thing ever. And other people tell me they do carnivore and they have diarrhea all the time. There are people that go vegan and they feel wonderful. And there are people that go vegan and they have all kinds of issues. They have digestive problems, okay? This is true even with the Pete stuff, the Ray Peat stuff. I know people out there that have tried the Ray Peat stuff and they were like, dude, like the orange juice and stuff like that just destroyed my guts. Yeah. Some people have issues digesting carrots. So even the whole carrot salad thing, like that's a great thing. Like, oh, it'll get rid of estrogens. But like some people don't digest carrots well. So like if you don't digest carrots well, like stop eating them. Well, same thing's true of training. I was listening to Chris Edmonds talking about, his time training with John Meadows. And Chris was talking about how, like for certain movements, like it doesn't matter for him. Like he does anything and his legs grow. That's what he was talking about. He's like, it doesn't matter what I do. He's like, any movement I do for my legs will grow. But then he was talking about how like for other body parts, it was totally different. He really struggled with other body parts and he had to try different things and different rep ranges. And, kind of break away from even what, John was, helping him with. And he talked about how great John was because John was very open-minded. Now, that being said, I'm going to point out to you how, my training has changed over the years even. I've talked about this in the past in other videos where I was doing like 20 rep squats and stuff like that. And it's not that I didn't make progress doing 20 rep squats. My legs were huge. It was fantastic. I had these big giant quads and, it was like, wow, like, yeah, the high rep squatting is great for me. Okay. But what's weird, and I've talked about this, it's like I would do something like 255 for 20. And then like my 1 rep max was only like 295. Well, how's that working? That doesn't add up. And so, it was like, well, high reps were good for hypertrophy, but it didn't improve my 1 rep max very much at all. And then I realized later on, oh, like for me to improve my 1 rep max, I need to stick to really low reps. But what's interesting is that my legs grew on low reps too. So here I was concluding to myself, high reps are the best thing ever because my legs are growing. But yet, when I switched to low reps, my legs grew on low reps too. That's interesting. So maybe it doesn't matter for certain body parts. Flip side to this though, and you guys can see this. I get messages from you guys. I have tiny little calves. They never grow. I train my calves to failure. I've tried everything out there. I've tried the seated calf raises. I've tried standing calf raises. I've tried calf raises with like extreme range of motion, interset stretching and weighted stretching. I've done donkey calf raises, like you name it, I've done it. And I won't say that my calves haven't grown. My calves have grown, but they're still small. They were even smaller before. They're still small. So even if I put like an inch on my calves, I would still have small calves. Similarly, I have a feeling my nose is going to start bleeding in the middle of this video. Similarly, like for upper body stuff, okay, I definitely need more reps for upper body. I can't train my upper body the same way I train my lower body. You know, people ask me, how did you get to a 225 overhead press and you do it for a triple? And it's like, yeah, so I didn't do it by doing a bunch of singles. I got there by doing stuff like sets of 10, sets of 8, lots of higher rep work. And you know, that was how I built that over time. Well, it doesn't work the same way for your upper body as it does for your lower body. And a lot of you guys out there already know this. It's like, you know, I have small biceps. My biceps don't grow. And I can do, I mean, at one point, I think I did something like, I can't remember the weight. Well, let's not worry about what my weighted pull-up was. I did something for 10, and I don't remember how much it was. But I know that I did 36 dead hang pull-ups, okay? You would think that that would be something that would build your biceps. Didn't for me. And, you know, I've done a lot of weighted pull-ups. You know, I used to, I know I could do 80 pounds for 3 whenever I weighed like 140 pounds. So, you know, at some point I was doing, you know, sets of 3. But, you know, even later on, I was doing stuff like putting on a 45-pound vest and doing, you know, sets of at least 10, multiple sets. But, you know, the point being here, my biceps don't really grow very well from those types of movements. Dips, my triceps grow. So like, I don't know what the actual ratio is. I mean, it would be probably exaggerating to say that 90% of my arm is tricep, but like, it would not surprise me if I got like an MRI and they were like 70% of your arm is tricep. Like it's disproportionate. Like I have no trouble growing the tricep from things like dips. I don't do like skull crushers. I don't do tricep extensions, but dips make it grow. Okay. Now, I'm pointing these things out, not because you need to do what I do. No, not at all. And, you know, lately, this thing of the effective reps model, which even the authors of the meta-analysis say that, you know, that their paper has been misinterpreted because, you know, 15 reps from failure still builds muscle. But, you know, the thing is, different things work for different people. You know, I have seen people who, you know, went crazy on the hip thrust. They were like, hip thrust is it. And, you know, months later, they barely made any growth, but, you know, they were hip thrusting very large amounts of weight. So you made progress. I mean, you're lifting more. That's progressive overload, but they didn't get a lot of growth out of it. Oh my. They didn't get a lot of growth out of it. And, you know, it didn't improve their deadlift either. I've heard that from tons of people. I've heard from tons of people that they started doing hip thrusts and it didn't improve their deadlift. Okay. You know, there are people out there who will tell you that they did all kinds of stuff to try to improve their squats. They did leg extensions, and they did hack squats, and they did leg presses, and nothing improved their squat. I was like, okay, what improved your squat? Good mornings. Right. So, you know, sometimes certain things work for certain people, and they don't work the same for everyone else. I'll point something out to you. The preacher curl, okay, most people do it incorrectly. Yes, people are doing the preacher curl incorrectly. How hard is that to figure out? How do you do a preacher curl? Well, look at Larry Scott doing the preacher curl. It starts off with a finger curl, actually. So your arm is completely straightened all the way down to your fingertips. And you curl the weight with your fingers, and then you curl the wrist, and then you curl the bicep. And the same thing goes back and out in reverse. So you go down with the bicep, then you know, with the wrist, and then extend your fingers, okay? Larry Scott had amazing biceps. So how you perform a movement also changes how the movement kind of stimulates you, if you will. Tom Platz had amazing legs from squatting. But look how many guys out there have a huge squat and they don't have Tom Platz's legs. They're built differently. So you could sit there and say, well, the best way to build your legs is squats because that's what Tom Platz did. But I know tons of people who tell me that the best thing they did for their quads was like hack squats. Oh man, hack squats. The hack squat machine just blew my quads up. That's interesting. What happened when you back squat? Oh, I feel like I got a lot of glute and hamstring out of it, but it really didn't do much for my quads. Oh, well, maybe you have longer femurs, okay? The point here being, there's nothing out there that is one best way for everyone to train. Anyone that tells you that there is, oh, everyone has to train this way, like, ignore them. Especially if they tell you something stupid, like, never do more than 8 reps. 8 reps is the perfect rep range for, whatever. No, it can't possibly be, because we even know from studies that different muscles respond differently to different rep ranges. Like your soleus is not the same as your bicep. Your tricep is not the same as your hamstring. So you're going to find that different muscles respond differently to different rep ranges and different volumes, different stimulus. On top of that, you're going to find that you might need something different than someone else. Some people build amazing lats from bent over rows. Some people do bent over rows and still don't have lats. Some people do deadlifts and have huge spinal erectors. Other people do deadlifts and they don't have huge spinal erectors. Some people bench press and it's all they need to build their pecs and their triceps. Meanwhile, another person has to do all kinds of pec flies and tricep extensions and skull crushers and stuff like that to build those. We're just not, we aren't carbon copies. Like, there's no one else like you, which is kind of cool. But at the same time, it means that you have to break away from what you think is, quote, correct or optimal, or what other people are telling you is correct and optimal. You should not be afraid to experiment. I mean, worst case scenario, you find out a movement that doesn't work for you, and so then you replace it with something that does. And the reality of it is like there's probably 10 different tricep movements that work for you. They all work. It's just that you're going to find one of them works best. There's probably 50 different quad movements. One of them is going to work better than the others. That doesn't mean that there's one that doesn't work at all. Maybe low bar back squat builds your quads a little bit, but not a whole lot. And then you find out that doing, sissy squats really builds your quads. Hey, that's cool. Like, now you know which things work for you. So, I just want to send that message out there that, you shouldn't be afraid to experiment. And if someone tells you that there's only one correct way to train, that can't possibly be true, because there's not one correct way to eat either. So, this is the thing. Like, you should go ahead and break away from what you're told that, oh, this is optimal, this is correct, this is the only way. No, don't be afraid to experiment. And that's why, I think, keeping a training log, that's like the best thing you can possibly do. That's better than any study out there, because it's basically a study on you. You're running a study on yourself. So now you know what works for you and what doesn't work for you. What could be better? Is there an optimal program? If there is, there's an optimal program for you, and it's not the same as the optimal program for me. But there definitely isn't one optimal program for everyone.